Biological Code Podcast, a podcast on Germanische Heilkunde. Today we're talking about pancreatic cancer. The story goes back several years and was recorded by Dr. Hammer. This case is one example of how he discovered the 5 biological laws of nature, which is now known as Germanische Heilkunde. A young patient, I call her Amber, along with her family, grieved the death of 4 uncles. In each case, they were elderly, and it was foreseeable that they would die. It was not the death of the uncles that was her conflict. The last to pass away was the uncle who had promised to leave her his beautiful antique chest. She had even designated a place of honor for it in her living room. And so, after his passing, the will was read. At this reading, Amber suffered a biological conflict when the lawyer told her that her sister Veronica instead would inherit the beautiful antique chest. A biological conflict must always have 3 criteria. For one, it must be experienced as dramatic or highly dramatic. This was certainly the case for Amber, since she would now not inherit the beautiful chest after all. Secondly, it must be unexpected and catch you off guard. Well, Amber had been absolutely certain that she would inherit the chest, as her uncle had promised her. And finally, the conflict must be perceived in isolation. Only when these 3 criteria are simultaneously met in a conflict does nature help with a significant biological special program. And which program it helps with depends on the conflict perception at the moment of the DHS. Amber loved her sister Veronica very much and had a very warm relationship with her. She didn't want to make a big scene about this, especially not at the lawyer's office, and so didn't talk about her frustration and disappointment. When the dear uncle had written his will, it's possible he couldn't quite remember which niece he had promised the chest to. Unfortunately for Amber, he left the chest to the wrong niece. Such mix-ups happen quite often and can occur to almost anyone. Well, his decision had caused serious consequences because Amber reacted with her pancreas. A few words about the pancreas. The pancreas is controlled by the brainstem, the inner germ layer. With the significant biological special programs of the brainstem, it's always about either getting the good morsel or getting rid of the bad morsel. In this case, Amber perceived it as an indigestible anger. She had already taken possession of the good morsel, namely the beautiful antique chest, and now had to give it up. In nature, the good morsel is normally a food morsel, for which the pancreas produces digestive enzymes. But we humans can also perceive a morsel in a figurative sense. Such a feeling always bypasses the rational mind. No matter what we might reasonably think, the perception at the moment of the biological conflict determines where in the brain and thus in the corresponding organ the impact occurs. And so Amber developed pancreatic cancer. To resolve the conflict, we would need a counter-perception or a biological solution. The biological meaning of this significant biological special program in the pancreas is to produce more digestive juice with the increased pancreatic tissue in order to be able to take possession of the morsel. When Dr. Hammer spoke with Amber about her diagnosis, he instinctively knew how to ask the right questions to find the cause of the cancer. For the first time in months, she now spoke to someone about her terrible feeling at the reading of the will. She broke her isolation. Dr. Hammer calmly explained to her the connection between her conflict and the resulting pancreatic cancer. Now, once they knew what the biological conflict was, a solution was quickly found. It turned out that her sister Veronica was going through some serious financial difficulties at the time, while Amber was financially well off. Dr. Hammer already had a plan. The chest had an estimated antique value of around 8,000 German marks. On Sunday, Amber and her husband visited the sister. Amber meaningfully placed a sealed envelope on the table. Then she told her sister about the matter with the chest and her pancreatic cancer. In the envelope, there were 10,000 marks. Veronica jumped up, tears streaming down her face, threw her arms around Amber and stammered through her tears, "For heaven's sake, why didn't you say anything? The chest is yours. From this moment on, you can take it home with you right now." Now Amber couldn't hold back either. She burst into tears and stammered, I love you as much as you love me. You know I'm not an envious person, but I had been looking forward to that chest so much. I'll accept your gift. Then my problem is solved. The rest was nothing but sobbing. But now the difficult part of the resolution phase began. Fortunately, Veronica enthusiastically learned Germanische Heilkunde with the 5 biological laws of nature, and soon became the most competent private nurse Amber could have wished for. Pancreatic tuberculosis makes you extremely tired. For 2 months, Amber lay in bed and could barely lift her head. At first, she had a high fever. She had night sweats so heavily that the entire bed linen and her nightgown had to be changed twice. Her lost appetite soon returned. A few words about tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is always a healing phase, no matter which organ it affects. The tubercle bacteria multiply in the conflict active phase, but only get to work after the conflict resolution, when the body switches from prolonged sympathikotonia to vagotonia. The tubercle bacteria are nature's surgeons and dissolve the tumor from the inside out, necrotizing, caseating, and decomposing. What remains is a cavity in the glandular tissue and calcium deposits. Night sweats are a sign that tubercle bacteria are present, and thus a biological healing is taking place. It is possible that there are no tubercle bacteria present due to today's overhygiene. In this instance, a healing phase can still take place, but the body is now forced to encapsulate the tumor. Microbes breaking down the tumor is always preferable, if it is possible. If you want to ensure you have tubercle bacteria, you can drink raw milk straight from the cow at your favorite local farm. When Amber was finally through her healing phase 4 months later, the two sisters had become even more than before, completely inseparable. Often, with the pancreas, it's about inheritance disputes, the so-called fight for the morsel. If there's no doctor or therapist with knowledge of Germanische Heilkunde who can contribute to a quick conflict resolution, but instead lawyers and courts have to be involved, then the matter drags on for a very long time. Such a dispute can last years. But with a growing pancreatic cancer, a person becomes more and more depleted. So it can easily be too late by the time the matter has been fought through in court. Amber was really lucky to have found Dr. Hammer, but to also have the support and care of her loving sister Veronica. Learn the basics, the guiding principles of Germanische Heilkunde. They aren't difficult, and once you understand how wonderfully nature is arranged within our bodies, you will naturally lose your fear of illness. Learn to think biologically. The knowledge of Germanische Heilkunde belongs in every household. If you want to learn more about how to apply the 5 biological laws into your everyday life, you can find more information on our association's website, urkraftleben.at, or join our program at thebiologyproject.org. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Telegram, and Instagram. You can now find this podcast also on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening. Until next time.